Hey, I'm just getting it set up for Jacques. I can't hear you. Am I?
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Just got in here and now it's having to tune all the different things into play here.
I understand that. Okay, let's just get his.
And of course, it's town in Nantucket, which adds additional layers uh, to the system. Uh,
Here we go.
Hello, everyone. Hey, it works this time. Most of you are muted. It's okay. I'm waiting for Jacques to show up. There we go. Good. Dan, you muted. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? No. Uh,
I
can
love Zoom. It's like a seance. Can you hear me?
I know, right? We have to bust out the Ouija board.
Uh,
Uh, is
Let
that a
me
bit?
stop. Yeah, hang on for a minute. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. I don't know what the scoop. We'll find out what the
think
scoop is.
she's been in she's in Alaska.
Oh, is she?
I think they're in. I think she's on a cruise.
Oh,
I mean,
good for her. Well, that
she
complexes
might be back, but I know she has been away.
that complexes the matter significantly. And as I'm not going to say a thing. We've got a quorum. I'm thrilled. All right. So this meeting is conducted in relation to the open meeting law and statements that were provided through us, courtesy of COVID-19 and now through the governor at this point. Unless you have any questions or concerns, you've all been advised of the protocol of what goes on with that. I won't bother to repeat it unless you have any questions or need me to repeat that process. Seeing none, we have an agenda before you at this point. I'd take a motion to approve said agenda. Joe, and second,
Again,
thank you, Don. Just roll call vote. Jock,
Aye.
thank you. Joe,
Accept. Aye.
Don,
I
thank you. And the chair says aye as well, too. Um, we don't have any draft minutes, public comment. Dan, welcome. Always nice to have you on board. And Dan's, I will say too, Dan's been really helpful at times. He's been sending me a lot of information on stuff that's been going on with the Cannabis Control Commission, some of his own thoughts on things as well too. So it really is a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you. Excuse me just for 1 minute.
Oh, not a problem. I'll take a minute just to thank you, Barry. But
You're welcome.
I'm yeah, happy to share my thoughts. I appreciate the town from the top down. Everyone that I've dealt with has been nothing but professional and patient with me through this process. And I'm always happy to share an opinion on the cannabis industry. So thank you for being patient with me, Barry. But yeah, I am humbled to be here and happy to think that I'm contributing in any way. So please don't hesitate to lean on me, anyone. I am here and thank you.
Thank you. All right. So a lot's been going on in the course of the past few months. The Cannabis Control Commission was making changes to their regulatory statute that's out there. There was a public review session as well too. I sent you the hyperlink for the PDF. If you have it, I still would strongly encourage you to make sure that you go through that. The other thing I really want to touch a little bit more heavily on is, unless you have any questions on that, let me stop. I'm sorry. No. Okay. So the other thing that started to pop up as well too was the Cannabis Control Commission was doing draft regulations to change their host, with things on the host community agreements, social equity. The amount of changes are pretty staggering. Now, that was presented to Mass Municipal as well, Mass Municipal Association, and they had an opportunity to comment back on it. Did any of you get a chance to follow that hyperlink and watch it? Yeah, I know you did. All right, so I've got a few homework assignments for you. Do me a favor and watch that. I really do need you to watch that because it's pretty profound, the changes that the Cannabis Control Commission wanted to do. I just need a minute here.
Barry, are you talking about the 305-page document?
I think that sounds about right. But there was go ahead.
There are a couple of things that jumped out.
Oh, hell yeah.
For example, this business of including a promise to make future monetary payments. We've talked about this before, or contributing to charitable arrangements of other sorts. So that popped out at me. The other thing that I found of interest was that by May 1 of 2024, we need to come up with local rules on this business of what they call equity standards.
Yep.
And I find it hard to believe that in Nantucket, we're going to be able to come up with equity standards.
Yeah, it's you won't know till you get it out there, but it is a mandate that is before us to at least develop the policy, and we are going to look at that today. Anyways, what's kind of stemmed out of that? Here it is. Bear with me. So this thing I'm going to put up on the screen here. There it is. All right. So in response to the Cannabis Control Commission releasing their draft regulations and what was talked about through the Mass Municipal Association when they all got together, and then through our own lawyer at K&P Law, Mass Municipal basically said there are some significant areas of concern in this for the cities and towns that are have the ability to do host agreements. So there was a draft letter that was sent out to all of the MMA affiliates, and basically Libby Gibson, as the town manager, sent that on behalf of the town of Nantucket back to the MMA, and I think also to the Cannabis Control Commission. But this is, I'm just going to leave this up for a minute for you to read, and then I'll scroll down. Good. All right, let me scroll down. You all good? Pretty much? Okay, great. Let me stop the share at the moment. So anyways, you can see the town isn't going to get into lockstep with MMA. There's with the Cannabis Control Commission. And if you watch the webinar that went on, you're going to hear a lot of the reasons as to why people were genuinely concerned with what direction was taking. Please also take, I know that document that I've sent the hyperlink for is lengthy, but it's worth a look at just to scroll through it. But if you don't have time, if things come up, definitely, the MMA webinar really encapsulates kind of the some of the major concerns that are happening out there.
The
So
thing,
go ahead.
the thing I found in that 300+ page document was most of it has no changes. It just stays the way it is. When you get down to that whole section on host community approval process, that's the thing to really read, because that's where you
Yeah.
find things that are going to impact us. And
Yeah.
that encompasses something like 11 pages, because I printed those pages out.
Yep. And some of the things that are proposed, which are I think now regulation. I'm sorry, I might be misquoting here, but they're regulation. I mean, are pretty onerous on a city or town to try to provide. In my opinion, at least.
Yes.
There's a lot there, and it's also too not only looking forward to the future of this, it's redressing some past things that have gone on, which have got people in the towns and cities also wild as well about it. So, I mean, we're not done yet. There's going to be more to follow, but I think what I'd ask you to do, if you haven't seen both of these, just do it. Joe gave you a good idea about what to kind of drill in on a little bit too. And then I'll just continue the discussion into next month. Dan? Yeah.
Thank you. And through the chair, just to give some context too, as to sort of what's happening on the state level surrounding this and the promulgation of these new regulations. The CCC this week has been meeting for 4 days straight, reviewing these new draft regulations, going through line by line and opining any changes they want to see. So the first 3.5 days up until around 12 o'clock, I believe today, they were reviewing the section on host community agreements. So with that being said, there have been some developments since the MMA webinar, but essentially it does stick, most of the crux of it stays the same, where now communities in their host community agreement are expected to provide itemized invoices for each documented community impact on that up to 3% impact fee that they can collect. On this note too, I have been doing some reflecting on this and having done some research on Nantucket and sort of what's going on with the landscape. I know that I believe at least in one of the host community agreements, if not both, the full 3% community impact fee is being sought, and that 3% is being utilized for mental health and addiction treatment services. I want to put this just on the table as just something to think about. The mechanisms that the state give on these fees, there is a 3% local tax that municipalities can collect. So say that the changes have changed how host communities can document these impacts, right? So if, say, Nantucket wants to keep the programs that have been funded with the revenue from that 3% community impact fee, the town could choose to use the 3% local tax instead. And then, that won't change any of the programs that have been set up. And then any impact can still be documented. It just has to be an itemized invoice at this point. And that can be slightly burdensome to the town. I agree. And I've spoken with my host community in Salem about this as well. And I think a point of contention right now is that, a lot of these municipalities' prerogative is that these agreements were signed in good faith. It was a good faith contract negotiation. To now have a new law that retroactively has a look back period at every HCA doesn't necessarily seem fair. But I just want to say that there are some mechanisms, I think, in place that can keep things as they are to an extent, and maybe some slight tweaks on the, bureaucratic and local level to document these things. And that's my 2 cents. And I appreciate the time, Barry. Thank you.
No problem. That was awesome. You're right. No, that was a really nice way to encapsulate some of the concerns that were out there. So I appreciate the comment very, very much. Excuse me just for a second. Is there anything else you want to discuss on this? I don't want to get too deep into it since a lot of you have not really had an opportunity to touch, do the touchstone things with this. But next month, I would ask that you please be prepared to give me a few comments at this point and see what you think where we're at with things. Moving along, we good?
Yeah. Do we have any sample agreements that encompass this equity business?
No, we really don't. I'm Dan. Go ahead.
I will say I haven't sent this to you yet, Barry, but I have worked on a draft that encapsulates the new language from Chapter 180 last year for my current agreement. I am working with Salem right now on negotiating a couple other host community agreements as well, which I believe I mentioned to you, Barry. But as it stands, I do have a draft that is based off of my old agreement that does just make some amendments that I'd be happy to share. But I know part of what the commission is working on as well, they are going to be publishing a draft host community agreement within the next few months. That's a priority for them. And I believe there is a sunset period now on these existing agreements that I think they moved the date to March 1st of next year that the CCC will begin reviewing these. So I believe it was May in the original draft, but now it's March as they voted on it. Excuse me if I lost my train of thought there, but hopefully that addresses some of your concerns.
Well, on the thing I printed out, it was May 1st of next year. If it's March 1st, that means we need to get started a little earlier than I would have anticipated.
The only problem is that I would say is it's still not time to do. We're going to talk about a social equity policy that really should be in place for the town. That's coming up in a few moments. But for the complete revision of the community, the host community agreements, it really isn't time yet under which to do it because everything is in flux right now. As much as the Cannabis Control Commission went forward and said, well, here's our regulations at this point, the amount of feedback that, from what I've been able to ascertain, the amount of feedback they've gotten from the various cities and towns is pretty staggering. And so I don't think we're close to being done yet. There's pushback that's happening. And I think it will be a question of with the towns and the Cannabis Control Commission, is that adequate enough to say, okay, we need to reopen public hearings or something? And I'm sure a number of towns, if they don't get a good, adequate response from the Cannabis Control Commission, will probably turn to hire, get the lawyers on board to start dealing with it on a very different level. So there's a lot of back and forth going on right now is the bottom line I want to get to.
Have we determined whether the 5-year limit is up on the first dispensary agreement?
I don't think it is. Go ahead, Dawn.
I don't believe it is, no.
Yeah, there was that was my question as well too, and there was a different series of dates that came into play which pushed it further out. I think it's probably within the next year, but now all of a sudden we're back to with all the wheels in motions about renegotiating a new host community agreement with them. It's kind of a Wild West phenomenon at the moment. So
we went through that a couple months ago.
We
I remember
did.
turning in a draft on that.
Oh yeah, no, I made sure that was farmed out to Libby as well too. But the biggest question was certainly, when could we start looking at it? And
yes,
I don't have it at my fingertips at this point, but I do remember that the date was pushed back because it wasn't time yet.
Yeah, I remember it was pushed back too, but it was an undefined date.
Yeah, I really, you're hitting me on a good point, but I just don't have that right at my fingertips. I thought I may have sent you out whatever information I had available on it. I'll go take a peek. and see what I can come up with. Anyone else? No. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
We'll just say to hopefully provide some more clarity as to sort of what the commission's thinking right now and what the regulations look like that they are on track to promulgate, is that once this March 1st date, 2024 comes to pass, any marijuana establishment or MTC, medical marijuana treatment center, will be able to submit their host community agreement for review by the commission. So even if, and I hate to even put myself in the middle of this hypothetical situation right now, but if one of the operators on the island wanted to have their host community agreement reviewed, they will have that mechanism. And and this has nothing to do really with what the Cannabis Control Commission is going to promulgate, because it is already law as of Chapter 180 and the changes to 94G that were concurrently happened.
I saw that, and the thing that struck me is if every agreement has to go to the state for review, it'll be 5 years before it ever comes back. I mean, there are a lot of agreements. How in the world do you get to review them all?
Yeah, and that was part of, if I may, through the chair.
Yeah,
that
please.
was part of, that was the logic they sort of expressed, where there were actually some commissioners who wanted to move up the date to review to November 9th, when the laws will be promulgated. But unfortunately, the CCC, the internal staff, expressed that they didn't have the internal capacity to review the 100 renewals a month, plus the provisional licenses and any that may be submitted as well. So that's where they agreed upon that 6-month sort of sunset period, and as well as for the commission themselves to ramp up that internal capacity to review these agreements. And that's where also they are prioritizing the model host community agreement. And I believe, if I remember correctly, if there's an agreement or a disagreement on the provisions within the agreement, municipalities and establishments can use the model HCA as sort of the default template placeholder until there is, an agreement achieved between all parties involved. So it sounds like they are trying to give all parties involved their sort of, time to prepare for this. But on that note too, I hope it doesn't sound like it's going to be too large of a lift on the municipalities. The biggest lift that's going to happen is having to itemize and invoice those community impacts that are coming in.
Yeah. But again too, in its current iteration, everything is ripe for lawsuits at the moment. And the thing that's got most municipalities worried, maybe I'm speaking out of turn a bit, is that it has put the ball back into the retail establishment that's out there. And there are a number of things that have the towns reeling about what just happened and how much power do they have now in order to do things. So, like I said, this is by no means closed or settled. I think you're going to see a lot of shots fired back and forth unless the Cannabis Control Commission finally says, okay, we got to find the happy compromise here amidst all that. But and it, like I said, once you read through and watch that webinar, all will be revealed in time. And Dan has done a really good job here. Thank you so much again. He's been on top of this almost continuously in his private life, and God bless you. But he really does have a good feel for what's going on. So I'm quick to want to listen to him and listen to his analysis on things. Anything else? All right. So the town had requested we draft local rules regarding the cannabis industry. And right now, with everything that's going on, that's going to continue to be on hold. As a matter of fact, we may not have to write it. The rules may well be provided for us by the Cannabis Control Commission. And that'll just bring everything to a cold, hard stop about what's supposed to be happening. So more on that as time moves on. Excuse me. The last thing was that the Libby and the town of Nantucket requested that this advisory board draft a social equity policy for the town, and I am going to put that on the screen in just a minute. Two of you were fantastic. You gave me some really good thoughts to work with. There were some great things published by the Cannabis Control Commission to lend guidance on that as well. A number of cities and towns had developed some. So what you're going to see on the screen is really an amalgam from all those various things. That policy was supposed to be in place. I forget what the date was. It was a few months prior. I'm feeling like it was either March or June. Was where it was a point where towns and cities were required to have drafted that social equity policy. We're a little bit behind the curve right now. I do know we're not the only one who's behind that curve. And even when we submit this to the town's going to want to review this. Ultimately, it is a select board decision under which to do this. So it's going to take a bit further, but at least I can, if you're all good with this today, we can move it along to its next stage, which will be to town administration and town council. And, they may either have feedback for us or just torque it to where it goes to the select board. So let me bring that up on the screen for you and share that. we go. Dan, go ahead.
Just quickly, I know before we dig into this, I did want to say that the two operators on the island, one of them is an economic empowerment applicant. So from the proposed draft regulations, and again, Barry, you hit the nail on the head. Sounds like the commission is going to be providing guidance at the very least, if not a model for these policies. But you're already essentially living up to some of the mandates where they are hoping that municipalities will enact one-to-one licensing on equity and non-equity licensees. So you're already living up to that provision. So I did just want to put that on the table to hopefully help you all rest a little easier. But and also on the timeline the CCC was looking for, I believe it was July 1st they expected to have this done. But I think it was June 28th they issued the memo. So and I believe during the July meeting they said that they are going to give municipalities latitude on this as long as they are making good faith in enacting these. So you are already many steps ahead of many folks. So, and thank you, Barry, again.
Oh, no problem. You're welcome. Joe?
Just for clarification, Dan mentioned a 1-for-1 between equity and non-equity. Is this real? And the reason I ask that is we have 2 non-equity right now. That would mean we'd be adding 2 more equity to the island.
So we're going to cover that. We are going to cover that. The moment we start walking into this social equity policy is the moment that we need to start entertaining some additional thoughts about what's going to take place. And so you'll see some things marked off in yellow in here, which are maybe some of the more controversial points that the select board is going to have to grapple with, town administration and the select board. So that's why I figured I might as well just call them out up front in the documents so that there's not, it's like, oh, we didn't see that. Now you're going to see it. So anyways, so do me a favor. We're just going to go through this numerically here, but let me give you a minute to read the purpose statement. Y'all good? Thumbs up. Perfect. So you can see we hit our first linchpin here is that, Joe, you're right. When we entertain this, the next thing we're going to have to entertain is having to provide licenses for these individuals as and we need to kind of do it proactively, I think, instead of reactively. The question that's going to come before the select board in the town is how many licenses do you want to make available? Now, at a minimum, it might, from what I'm gathering, it's going to be at least 2 licenses additional that would be awarded to an entity that meets the criteria for social equity. And anyone can correct me if I'm wrong here because I'm still learning my way through this. The certification is provided by the Cannabis Control Commission on that determination. So any entity's got to go through that, as well as whatever is coming up with the Cannabis Control Commission before they can even approach the town. But the change to the license cap is something that has to go through a town meeting. And so it really will be a matter of having that process to be worked out as well. Give me 1 minute, Joe, and then I'll just get a little further. Now, the verbiage, it sits in section 9512 of our own code of Nantucket, and that's the limitation on the licenses. The verbiage is pretty specific. That would need to be changed in there. So whether it's a percentage of the number of alcohol licenses, we could theoretically even just abolish the limitation. You got to remember when a lot of these regulations were developed, this was a brand spanking new industry and no one knew what it was going to look like. And we've got a number of years under our belt now, both locally and in the state, to see what that begins to look like. So that's why this language is in here as well, too, because if you're going to do the social equity thing, you're almost going to automatically have to adopt what that looks like. Joe, go ahead. Thank you.
The question I have is, if there are 4 dispensaries, how long will they stay in business? I mean, that is a really tough one, I think, because you could assume the 2 existing ones, let's assume they lost half the business to the 2 new ones. Are they financially viable?
Mm-hmm.
There may be nobody on the island when we get done with this.
I don't think the island can support 4
I don't either.
of them be successful businesses. But why
No.
does I wonder if Green Lady can meet the criteria?
Go ahead, Dan. You're muted there, sir.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
Through the chair, by the state's definition, the Green Lady, any economic empowerment applicant will meet this criteria of an equity applicant. The Economic Empowerment Program was a limited window program in April 2018, and essentially the failures of that program are what led to the social equity program in the state. So essentially all of the benefits of the social equity program have been lumped in for economic empowerment applicants. Another point I would like to make on this, though, if we updated the verbiage here from marijuana retail establishment to marijuana establishment, just blanket, you could open this up for any iteration of a cannabis establishment, right? So say me, for instance, I'm hoping to potentially get an HCA for delivery and social consumption. These are different licenses not covered by the retail establishment cap right now. With that said as well, though, I do think it maybe would behoove the town if they did want to give more, retail licenses to look at that cap. But I brought it up, I think, during our last meeting where you can truncate by license type and have specific caps for each license type. I used cultivation as an example. And I know, North Adams, Massachusetts, another city where my apartment is actually, they have broken it down by license type, and they have a 50% cap related to cultivators. And I know North Adams is another municipality we may want to look at too, because they were one of the original 12 municipalities in the social consumption pilot program. So I think they were very deliberate in how they were drafting from the start to give that, wide berth on the different license types. But with that being said, the town may not have to make more retail licenses available if the town just prioritize giving equity applicants any HCA for any marijuana establishment that they may want to operate on the island.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? All right, so let's jump down to section 2. Let me just give you a minute to read that. Let's see if you have any comments or concerns there. We good? Go ahead, Dan.
If I may, through the chair again, I think this is just where if we are deliberate in making the definition for marijuana establishments, which is also the establishment, the bylaw that my initial proposal that we voted on was as well, was to expand that marijuana establishment definition on the town level to allow for all license types. So that's where I think if we, through this document, and I know this is just a draft, but if we update that to marijuana establishment, then that gives the wide berth from the town. And then even if the town meeting wanted to up the percentage on adult use retailers, but that's where, I'm thinking hypothetically for the annual town meeting next year, say there is a warrant article talking about the different percentages, the town could, strike down upping that. So I don't think the town maybe would want to necessarily just rely on the retailer, because I know there are cultivators who have been trying to get operational, some production licenses, myself, and there are quite a few stakeholders that I think might be able to flesh this out. And I know a lot of folks, when these were initially being drafted, the focus very much was on the adult use retailer, because that was sort of the, where everyone's minds were. But again, I digress, and thank you, and I yield my time.
Yeah, thanks. Anyone else? No. Okay. So you can read ahead, come up into section 3, and section 3, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to read part of it, and then I'm gonna have to give you the other part of it afterwards. Let me know and I'll scroll for you.
Okay.
So let me scroll over here so you can see the start of page 2. So the last paragraph of section 3, I wanted to get this in here. Just because we were starting to talk about host community agreements. And so this I found from the town of Somerville with their scoring system. And I thought that was just, we've had a few areas of concern with the way we scored things in the past. And their template that the model that they use out there that they've adopted I think is just wonderful. It's just straight to the point. But I wanted to at least kind of open the door a little bit and say, forecast ahead here that we really do, I think as a town, we need to have some better criteria and a scoring system in place under which to do it. But that, again, is just my personal opinion. As you can see, highlighted as well, there was that other controversial area that we were going to talk about, which was maybe we don't bother with host community agreements anymore. And that certainly is an option for us to consider here, which removes pretty much just about everything that's here. It would be treated just like any other business and that would come before the town of Nantucket. So again, I mean, we can recommend, I think we can spell it out, but we won't be the final approving authority for this. Um, that's going to rest strictly with the select board. So they're going to have to make some determinations about what they all want to do. Questions, comments? No. Go ahead, Dan. I'm just going to
Through the
call you for
chair.
each one, dude.
I feel like that's probably
No, no,
appropriate at
it's
this
no,
point.
I'm messing with you. It's
No, hey,
perfectly fine. It's fine. Don't
I
worry about
may, I may not have an opinion on one of these, but I think I forgot what my point even was.
it. Oh,
What apologies. Yes, the waiver process. And Barry, I just want to thank you again. This was one of my points that I forwarded to you over the last few months.
right.
And I believe that this is definitely a great option. And all power, like you said, Barry, still remains with the select board. They're the ones signing this waiver. But again, too, in the process in the town of Nantucket, any marijuana establishment hoping to operate must get a special permit from the planning board after they achieve their provisional license from the Cannabis Control Commission. So there still is a high level of oversight. All plans will be vetted before any construction begins. There will be thorough checks and balances, as far as I'm aware. So hopefully to rest any concerns that anyone may have. But thank you again, Barry.
Yeah, no problem. You really do raise a good point because that will become evident in section 6. They will still be treated like any other business that is making application to want to do something here on the island. And there, all of a sudden, yeah, you're right. It will run into zoning issues at this point, board of health issues that may still be hanging out there. But the bar for them to get that establishment in place is actually becomes a little bit lower. But you're right. You're not just going to be able to walk in and say, here you go. I want to do this. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Go right ahead and build forth. They've still got a lot of things that they'll have to clear through at this point. Let me move on to section 4. Section 4 is almost a boilerplate type thing. I think any questions, comments on that section? All right, so you can keep going. Section 5, short and sweet again. Okay, this may be another one of those more controversial areas at this point, and that certainly raised some major hackles when the Cannabis Control Commission brought their program forward to Mass Municipal. It was the burden on the town to provide a lot of this stuff was people were feeling it was very, very onerous. But this is part of something, again, that will have to be determined by the town in terms of what they all want to do. Okay, section 6. Last but not least. Questions, comments, suggestions? Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I was going to wait until the end, but after reading through this, I did send out in the past couple of weeks something that I've
You,
been receiving from Mood, Mood. And
yep.
Mood is based, they're selling their product across the country via mail. So they don't have any bricks and mortar to deal about around the country. They just have
Mm-hmm.
one location. And it just strikes me that that is really a clever way to do that and avoids a lot of expense.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether you've seen any of those ads, but they are slick ads. They really have done a great job on the marketing side.
Yeah, no, you sent that. I got that email from you, which you sent to all of us, which was great. It was enlightening.
So I'm thinking I'm going to be an owner of one of these dispensaries, and I'm
Ah,
doing what?
there you go. Yeah, there you go. We'll see if we can get you into social equity status
No,
too.
I am not. I
Just,
have no interest in this at all. This is way too dangerous at this point in life.
yep. Anyways, yeah, good, Dan.
If I may, through the chair. Joe, just wait till I open my establishment on Nantucket, and I'm going to welcome you with open arms. We will walk through the entire process, okay? We'll
And,
find you your product, okay?
and to the chairman, I might add, remember we being Abby and I were supposed to get a tour of the
All
Green
right.
Lady
Yeah,
long time ago.
right.
Well, no, right after Labor Day, I guess
Right.
it
I
was going to be.
remember sending something, I thought it was even more recent than that. But anyways, I thought I had sent something to you a little bit more recently, but go ahead.
I have never been in one of those shops, so I could get at least an advance notice of it. And when I go to visit Dan's, I'll know what I'm walking into.
There you go. But I would certainly encourage you that Nicole would be very open towards still doing that for you. I know, and especially when we fell into summer, everything goes kaflooey at this point. But you
Yes.
should feel as though that was a limited time offer under which to do it. The other thing I've done too, even if you've never stepped foot inside something, is sometimes when I'm off island, if I've got some free time on my hands and there's a cannabis facility close by, I'll go spec it out just to see what it's like. Um, and most of the staff, and especially if you find the owner there, they're very enthusiastic. If you tell them what you do, they're incredibly enthusiastic to want to talk to you. But just to get a sense, go in there anonymous and get a sense of the lay of the land. But I will guarantee you that it is definitely worth seeing what is going on here locally, and don't feel like you're under any time constraints. So now that things are settling down, I would encourage you avail yourself of doing that. And if you need me to help you with it, you just got to let me know. Um, anyways, so if you're all good with this, do you feel like you want to take some more time with it? Do you feel like you've been able to digest this pretty well and move this along to its next stage, which will be probably through the town manager? I don't know if she's going to want us to further dialogue with town council on this, but at least if I bring it to her, she'll give us some guidance about what the next step is. So what do you
I
think?
think
Are
I
we,
think you ought to go forward,
all
pass
right.
it on.
So let me do this. Let me get a motion from you to say that the Cannabis Advisory Committee here um, is I don't know. What's the motion I'm looking for? You're going to adopt this as a policy to be brought forward by the town, or you can give me whatever language you want. I'm just giving you a suggested thought here, but I do need a motion, please. Someone.
I'd make a motion to send this forward to the town manager and ultimately the select board as the suggested policy.
Okay. Thank you.
Second it.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Dawn,
Yes.
Joe,
Aye.
Jacques,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. I will make sure I send you a copy of this as well too. I was still working on this morning, so I would like to have gotten it out to you a little bit sooner, but this is definitely a last minute thing. All right, perfect. That's great. That is a major accomplishment. Is there anything else you all want to talk about? Your time is precious, and I want to get you the heck out of here too. But we're here to discuss whatever. If you're all good, I would appreciate a motion to adjourn then.
Motion to adjourn.
And let's see here. So motion to adjourn. Dawn, you good?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. So Dawn? Aye.
Aye.
Yep. Joe?
Aye.
Jacques?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Good job today. Thanks for making things happen. Take care. Have a good rest of the day.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Everyone, thank you.